Okay, it'd be just good to start with a little bit of background on Nscale as a company, sort of when, why formed, key milestones to date. Just yeah, what you can tell us.
Yeah, certainly. So Nscale, we've been operating in the data center space for about 3 years now. Nscale is a company that has been spun out specifically to produce generative AI data center space, HPC computing power, and we're quite unique in what we do in terms of we don't just build the data center and then let the space out to our customers. We do the full vertical stack with every single piece of installation right down to the GPUs, and then we sell GPU hours to our customers, and that's been born out of a data center business, and now we build specific AI ready data centers that are typically liquid cooled and looking at large scale GPU deployments. So a very exciting space and very specific in what we provide.
Yeah, clearly, as you're aware, the AI data center space, if that's what we call it, the challenge is huge for the industry. I'm just wondering, before we drill down a bit, do you think that the industry is fully aware, if you like, of how big that challenge and clearly it's an opportunity as well, but do you think it's ready for it, or do you think folks haven't quite grasped the scale of I say both the problem and the opportunity therefore?
Yeah, I think it's probably a combination of all of those, Phil. I think we're certainly aware of the issue, and I think the scale that is being observed at the moment is unprecedented in terms of the level of demand, the capacity. But I think the density is the real thing that is the real challenge for businesses in terms of traditional data center space is being designed to kind of 15 kilowatts. A rack is just a thing of the past now, and we without blinking talk about racks that require 132 kilowatts as an example, and so the whole infrastructure around that, not just to power it but then to cool it as well, is a significant challenge. And I think that's the thing that we're all coming up with our own ways of solving, and of course, as you do that, we need to do it in a sustainable way and try and minimise the impact of the data centres on the surrounding environments and communities that we work within. And so, I think we are aware of it. I think the concerning thing for me is the amount of the real big scale announcements that seem to be coming out every week now, and we don't really even flinch when we see someone saying that they've commenced work on a 1 gigawatt campus. That for me is probably the thing that really needs some focus and some challenge around in terms of what the sustainable credentials, the renewable energy credentials are around that, because I think we all have an obligation to make sure that as well as finding ways to create these mega data center campuses, we've got to ensure that we're doing it in the most efficient way. And I think just to put that into context, I've been building data centers for nearly 30 years now, and I think I've built about a gigawatt worth of data centers over those 30 years. At the moment, we're looking at pipelines of 1 gigawatt in a 24-month period, and it's just absolutely unprecedented. So there's a big obligation on all of us data center operators to ensure that we build the most efficient data centers that we possibly can.
Yeah, and just quickly to that point, do you think, I mean, clearly in the early days, I always slightly sort of mischievously characterize it, people planted trees to offset their carbon and then said that we have a sustainable data center. Clearly the industry's moved on from that level and it is doing more meaningful stuff. But again, do you think the sustainability effort needs to be ramped up now, because I say it's just about coping with current data center capacity, which is expanding just because the digital world is expanding, and then suddenly AI comes along and steams in and as you alluded to, 1 gig's neither here nor there kind of thing. So is the industry, can it be sustainable, I guess, with this new level of power requirements and everything else that goes with it?
Yeah, I think it can, but I think, as you say, the PPAs were a good start, and I think because it had everyone thinking about renewable energy, it had everyone thinking about offsetting the harm that we were doing. But it was very much an attitude of let's do less bad, and I think going forward, we have to be operating in a good space in the data center. So if you look at, our Norwegian data center facility, it's fully powered by hydropower. So there's no PPAs, there's no offsets there. We're fully renewable within that data center. So that again is a good start. But of course, everyone doesn't have access to hydropower, certainly not on the scale that some of the Scandinavian countries do. So I think on that one, the onus is going to be on data center companies, but very much so on governments as well, to really drive investment in renewable energy sources, because I don't think there's any lack of appetite from data center companies to take up renewable energy. It's just the availability and access to it. And I think, if you're looking at growing a business, particularly in the AI space where the power requirements are so significant, if you have an option to wait for a renewable energy source, but it's going to be 4 years away, and other power, more traditional power sources are available within 18 months to 2 years, then unfortunately, on a business level, the decision is often made for you. So I think investment in renewable energy sources, certainly from, I think you'll see more companies where the wait time for energy drives a position where we end up having a provision for our own data centers. So we're providing our own centralized power sources that serve the data centers. And so that's one aspect of it, I think, and in terms of driving renewable energy investment. I think this government certainly are setting the signal that they're willing to invest in technology, and they understand very much so that renewable energy and sustainability needs to be at the heart of that. But I think, again, we, our customers, the technology manufacturers and providers also have an obligation to make sure that the equipment that we're putting into the data centers is as efficient as it can be. And so really looking at optimizing the performance of the equipment, whether it be base infrastructure or the very clever IT technology equipment that goes within, that's going to be key. And I think, ironically, AI can play a very big part in that. And we're already looking at systems that optimize the operation of a data center, both from a hardware technology point of view, infrastructure, and also from a software perspective, where we run the equipment to the most efficient way that we can. So and if you think about the PUEs, I think the cooling has a big part to play in that, Phil, as well. And where the workloads are getting so dense now, you're often getting to a stage where the only means to cool these data centers at the densities that they're running at is via direct liquid cooling or any form of liquid cooling. And that in itself can make the data centers much more efficient. And I think, for us, anything over 1.2 for a PUE as an annualized operating condition is viewed as as inefficient. And so I think that's a big step forward. When we're designing data centers, we're looking for them to be operating at kind of 1.15, 1.17. So it's a big step forward from standard traditional data centers where we just used to blow large volumes of air in to try and cool the workload. So I think more tailored and more positioned cooling, where we're actually cooling at source and removing a lot of the heat and emission from that, is a really good way to move that forward.
Okay, and in terms of the Nscale proposition, I mean, you explained a little bit at the start, but so you're not a colo. I mean, you build the data center, but you then populate it with the, as I understand it, the IT stuff. So are you a cloud provider as a service? Just what is the model, I guess? What is it exactly that you're doing and then offering to the customers?
Yeah, for sure. So we do have our own cloud services, and that is a big part of the business. But I suppose the best way to describe us would be GPU as a service. So we work directly with the manufacturers and their OEMs to ensure that we get allocation of GPUs. And I think even that, that the manufacturers, I think very cleverly have got to a position where they want to vet every project that's going forward. They're not just issuing GPUs out here, there, and everywhere. So they want to understand who the end customer is, what the application is, which I think is a good way because it controls it. So we provision the whole piece, and I think the reason that's quite unusual and fairly unique is because there's such a massive investment in the IT aspect of any deployment. So the data center build, there's fairly standard metrics for that, and I guess if you rounded it up, you're probably looking at sort of 10 million a megawatt to build a data center. The investment from an IT side is sort of quadruple that, and can be more as well. So we provision the whole piece, and then it's GPU as a service. So we give access to our customers to GPUs, and they operate. In many cases, the scale that we're seeing coming through now is just absolutely way beyond expectations. And so for us, we I think very cleverly, Nscale had built up a very decent land bank of powered sites that they could develop in the future. And at the time, when you're talking about sites that have a 400 megawatt supply, 330 megawatt supply, it seems like a pipe dream. But now we're really starting to see levels of demand that could justify, certainly 50% of that site being deployed immediately, and then you scale from there as well. So so I think GPU as a service is probably how I would position the business, with cloud services in addition to that.
Yeah, and I know, and again, you mentioned it already, but in terms of your data centers, I think you're keen to promote the fact that, whereas a lot of people regard them as sort of, that not, if not the enemy, everyone's aware of how much power they consume, is it 1% or whatever, and certainly local authorities and stuff are either having moratoriums or banning new data centers, etc. But I think you're keen to demonstrate that data centers can actually be sort of a power for good within communities through some of their sustainability stuff, and I guess also location is quite important. So just perhaps you can expand on how you think data centers can be a sort of force for good, as opposed to maybe at the moment where everyone thinks they're a little bit of a bad citizen when it comes to the environment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I completely agree, and I think I think the first thing I would point to is the real work that's going in, meaningful work that's going in to make the data centers more efficient, so that we get to this this net zero position. Whether it can ever be achieved or not is it's probably beyond me to say, but certainly we're getting down to a very minimal impact that the data centers have now. I think the other part is that there's a lot of money invested by data center operators to minimize the impact that their data centers have, whether that be selecting more efficient equipment, which by its very nature, equipment that is particularly efficient is more expensive than equipment that is less efficient. So we're making a commitment by doing that. There's a massive amount of infrastructure cost that goes in to managing the workload, and as I say, looking at AI perhaps to run things efficiently, so that you're adjusting the operation of equipment as it's running so that it runs in the most optimal way, which is certainly a positive thing. But I think the other part is the socio-economic piece with it, in terms of, certainly if you look at some of the areas that we operate in, we look at the wider community and we look at projects that we can sponsor within that area. We look at programs that we can run where we're starting to try and work with local colleges, technology colleges particularly, where we can run data center operator courses there. We can look to provide employment. And if you look at some of, particularly in Norway, some of the remote locations there, it really does give a career path forward, and also looks to provide local investment. And I think, evidence of that is that we get a lot of interest from the local mayors in towns that we operate in, where they want to come in, speak to us, firstly understand what the proposition is and what it is that we'll be doing within the local area, but also looking at ways in which we can commit to that community. And we sponsor certain activities within some of the communities that we work within, and some of the services that councils just typically are struggling to afford now, and they're things that we can step in on. And equally, in terms of the upgrade of the infrastructure, we're looking at programs where we'll work with the local utility and we'll pay for things like additional transformers to be installed to open up more capacity available, more renewable hydropower to be available. Looking at things like heat recovery as well, where in Norway particularly, there's fish farms there that benefit from taking the heat away from the data centers. And I think that's been something that data center operators have found frustrating over the years, that they'll invest money for heat recovery and then there's no one to take it. And where now we can do that. And so, yeah, I think, we have to work on all fronts. There's not one thing that you can do and think, yeah, we've made a difference there. We all have to make the data centers more efficient. I think, one of the things we are looking at now is that with the growing density of the racks, we can use smaller footprints, certainly for the data space now. And you have fewer racks. We're talking about a 40 megawatt deployment for one of our customers. And we can achieve it in one data hall. I think it's incredible, really, to look at the our times have changed, and that makes it far easier for us to sort of manage the air, manage the cooling through that facility as well, and the power, making sure that we're putting really efficient solutions forward that that provide a bespoke but certainly very efficient solution for all of the workloads that we're running. And then I think once we get through that, it's also a case of looking at the careful monitoring and of the way that the data center operates, so that we can certainly see firstly how we run it most efficiently, but also we can use it in terms of a way, if something operates out of sequence or out of a way that it typically has been observed, then it's a good indicator that something could be going wrong. So again, it helps us be more efficient and provide more uptime in the most efficient way. But I think working with the communities, providing employment and making sure that we're putting back into the communities is and most data centers are doing that now. And I think that work often goes unpublicized, and we could certainly do a better job, I think, of marketing all the good things that we do.
And in terms of Nscale itself, clearly what you're describing, it's obvious that you are busy, but in terms of actual sort of announcements and things that have been going on, it'd be good to understand. So, I'll list them all, and perhaps you can talk to them. But I think you've appointed some new folks. I think a chief operating officer and chief finance officer. You've got partnerships fairly recently announced, I think, with Nscale and Open Innovation. And then I think there was also an acquisition of, was it Container or Container? So perhaps you can just explain, if you like, the dynamics of that, how that's demonstrating that you're moving forward as a company.
Yeah, certainly. So I think the appointments are big news for us, and Josh Payne, our founder, is acutely aware that to grow the business at the scale that certainly there's the potential there for, and his aspiration, he needs to have a very experienced board there that have experience of running bigger companies. And so, certainly for myself, coming from big data center organizations, we've had Carl Havard come in as our COO, who has operated in the AI space for a number of years and certainly been highly successful. And then Ron Huishman, who's come in as our CFO, again has had experience of running mature businesses, and already, with all of us there, I think it's quite nice on some of our leadership meetings that we have, where you can see the experience coming through from the bigger companies, where we're saying this is how we have done it previously, and it can often form, a rather than having to have lessons learned all the time, we can kind of impact with some of our experiences, and some of the success stories that we've all been part of is helping us move forward, in a very quick way. And it's required, because I think the deals that we'd probably anticipated when the business was first conceived have surpassed all of our expectations. We're dealing with some really, really big deployments now, and I think the way in which we deal with our customers, the feedback we get all the time is that they felt it was a really professional experience. They felt very comfortable coming in and partnering with Nscale. And to that end, I think, some of the other announcements that you see, like the Nscale and with some of the big chip manufacturers as well, we're making the strategic alliances that we need so that we can become, a fully integrated platform globally, and which is not an easy thing to do, but I think we're making great moves there straight away to do that. And the level of investment that we're attracting is again, I think, is quite striking for the company. It's a real success story for us, but I think it also demonstrates the strength and confidence in the AI market. And I don't think this has the feel of the dot-com bubble that everyone was just waiting for it to burst, and of course it did. I don't think this one will. I think if it's managed correctly and it's governed and run in a positive way, then I think the AI is the future for us. And I think that's the other part. We talk about the impact of data centers, but the impact of AI on us as a global community is again, the people are starting to become nervous about that. But again, I think we should be doing more to talk about all the positive aspects that AI can have on us as a population.
And in terms of I guess, Nscale, where you are now, I mean, it doesn't particularly matter, but what kind of company would you call yourself, and therefore how would you position yourself within the overall, whether it's the data center landscape you think you're a part of, or the IT landscape, or is there a sort of new category, sort of halfway between the two? Just yeah, how you where you see yourself at the current time.
Well, I think I've seen some things recently where we're being referred to as a European hyperscaler, which I think is very flattering, and because I think we provide all services. We provide cloud services provision, we GPU as a service. We do provide, we've got our own data centers, and so from that perspective, we are the full package really. But I think as we look through it, the customers that we're having coming in are very significant global players, and so they're really interested in being into our GPU as a service, and then all of the additional services, the cloud service provisions that Nscale provide. And what I really like about it, and the thing that has impressed me since I've been with the business for about 6 months now, but the thing that's really impressed me is the level of expertise across all different fronts. So whether that be now on the data center build side, on the IT software and vertical stack side, the inferencing, the development of the large language models, etc. Most of it is done in-house, and I think that's really impressive. And even down to our ops teams now, we have really experienced operations teams that are, in fairness, are gearing up to manage data centers that are very different to anything that we've managed before. And so looking at the level of the wealth of experience across all parts of the data center industry, I think Nscale have done a brilliant job of pulling all that together. So I like the European hyperscaler piece, but I feel obliged to point out we are a global business. We operate all over the globe, certainly in North America as well, and I think the Singtel collaboration is to drive activities in the Far East and beyond. So I think we'll be a global player in this market, and we've got big things under development at the moment, and it's as we start to add capacity to the model, I think we'll grow in an exponential rate.
Okay. Next question. Nicely, you mentioned big things, and I'm sure plenty of them you can't share for commercial reasons. But if you can at least give us some hints, or a general thoughts as to where the roadmap is taking you, what we can expect from yourselves over the next year or so, it'd be good to understand.
Yeah, well, I think probably the thing that goes most in our favour is that we're building new stock. So everything that we build is AI specific. It's bespoke to AI, whether that be direct liquid cooling or whether it's dealing with the power requirements, which are enormous. We're having conversations with OEMs where they're talking about 6 supplies to racks from 6 separate bus bars. It's an incredible amount of pressure on the infrastructure, but we're developing it from scratch, and so we're building AI ready. So we're not having to convert existing data centers generally into AI ready space. So I think that's good, because from that point of view, everything we do is bespoke, and we get the most efficient design that we possibly can. We're building certainly in Norway at the moment, and we're developing 2 sites in North America as well. And so from that point of view, there'll be AI ready data centers that will come online next year in 2025. We're acquiring sites again in North America and in Europe, and in particular UK and Norway. We're in very acquisitive mood, and we're looking at some very decent sites there that are power ready and have planning as well. So the expansion seems to know no bounds, and I think our expansion pipeline is in excess of 1 gigawatt at the moment. You know, and 750 megawatts of that is in the US alone, and we're adding to that portfolio. But I think what's really interesting is that, you know, if you take Europe, we're getting up to sort of in excess of 0.5 gigawatt just in Europe alone, and obviously the challenges that come with that, working with the aging electricity grids in Europe is a challenge for sure, and making sure that we're doing good agreements with sustainable energy companies, and so that we're powering everything we do with renewable energy. And so I think from our point of view, really excited that we're underway with some of our builds, and working closely with the leading GPU providers, and making sure that our designs are bespoke for them. And I think the next step for us is making sure that we get our data center designs and subsequent builds certified by the manufacturers, so that, you know, we're good to go, and we can start to deploy some of these massive clusters of GPUs. So really exciting times for Nscale, and I can't wait to see where it goes.
And maybe finally, I often ask the question, digital world obviously has certain requirements. The sustainable world has, shall we say, different requirements, and you can potentially say the two are if not incompatible, certainly not, you know, directly compatible. Just your thoughts, and I know you mentioned, you know, some of them as we went through, but just your thoughts as to whether we can sustain the digital world, if you like, and head towards net zero successfully, or do you think there has to be you know, some element of compromise, whether it's, you know, governments telling us, oh, we have to consume less digitally, or we're not going to quite get to net zero because everyone wants all these digital services, so that's the priority? Just any thoughts you might have as to how we balance that moving forward?
Well, I think, you know, my answer to that, we've got to, because I don't think the requirement for digital is going to go away. I don't really think that people are going to be able to abate the use of digital technology, you know, whether it be us all wanting to go on our phones and see what the balance of our bank account is, or whether you want to do a call with your doctor because, you know, it's more convenient to do that, or you want to shop online. You know, there's so many things that we do that require data centers, and specifically AI. So I don't think there's going to be a position where governments will stop the digital momentum. I think, you know, you probably will see a bit more of the build moratoriums coming in, but that really is going to be to protect the infrastructure that's in place. And so for me, I think there's got to be a lot more investment in renewable energy, and that really is key. I think we've got to look at, you know, the potential for data centers in some regions to be self-powering, where, you know, we're building our own power sources so that we're not viewed as a draw on the local grid or network, and certainly not inconveniencing any of the areas that we operate within. I think driving the efficiency of the equipment is going to be key. I mean, all we hear is about, you know, later releases of GPUs are going to be significantly more power hungry than the previous edition, and I think from that point of view that we need to manage that message, because I think we're working with you know, the biggest providers of GPUs in the world, and when they actually release the information, it's nowhere near as bad as the unhelpful rumors that circulate in terms of it's going to be this big, it's going to be this amount. And so working closely with the manufacturers, I think, is going to be key. And I think the other thing that we probably are going to have to get much better at is actually understanding what the requirements are. I think how much have we seen over the last 10 years of people asking for and booking capacity that they're never going to get near to their use of, but you provision all of the equipment for it. You take energy from power grids to feed that demand. And then, you know, even in some of the bigger players, we're seeing utilization rates of 50-60% of a contracted capacity load. And so I think that, for me, we need to get better on that. And And equally, I think you'll start to see whether it be governments or the utilities themselves will start to put measures in place where they say if you book capacity and then you don't use it, there's a penalty to you, or you can have it taken off of you. So I think, better management of capacity, better projections of what we actually need for the operation. And then when we are into production and we are running AI data centers, closely monitoring it to see, what the utility rate is at the moment. There is no equipment that runs at 100% of the face rate. So looking at what the actual requirement is, I think is going to be key, so that we can manage that far better, and we're then not putting unnecessary demand on the utilities. But I think an overhaul, and dare I say, without being controversial, I think looking at alternative fuel sources as well. Nuclear is a big one that is being discussed at the moment, and I think that comes with its own challenges. And but equally, if it's if there's a way to manage and regulate that properly, that could be another good way of powering data centers for the future. And but really, renewable, as much hydro power that we can use, solar power, wherever we can. It's if we can have reliable sources for that, I think every data center operator in the world wouldn't hesitate to use it. So yeah, I think it will happen, and whether we can get to net zero or not, that's a big question for me. But the way I look at it is, even if we don't, if we can get down to 5% or 4%, or it's still better than where we are currently. And I think we've got to have a firm commitment. And I don't think we need to wait for governments to tell us that. I think all data center operators know, and we've got a social obligation that we need to be doing less harm. And I don't think there's a data center company out there that doesn't want to be better than they are currently.
Okay, I mean, it's been fantastic to chat, and some brilliant insights into both what's going on at Nscale and the industry, well, data center industry, IT industry, digital industry, more generally. So, Alex, it's been great to chat. Really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Phil. Cheers.